the shadow of the deaths of 34 people the day before, all of whom, which is common cause, were killed by police action. Were you referring to their deaths in any way in what you said?
I did refer to their deaths as a painful thing which happened.
Mr. Minister, I do not understand you to have been including among those. For him it was a painful process, that life was lost, that you are referring to what you referred to as the anarchists. It seems to me, and we'll argue this, and I don't want us to be bogged down, and I'm putting this to you. It seems to me that here you were clear. The message that you were sending across is that the police were justified in killing the 37 people that they had killed up to that point. Because in your view, they were running amok. They were anarchists.
Well, I did refer to the people who had died, 34 people we are talking about.
It's a minor point. It's not clear that 37 people died as a result of police action. There's a question mark over the third person who died on the 13th, the third striker who died on the 13th. But that's just a detail, really. But you do concede you were talking about the 34 people who died on the 16th, and also all the people who were killed in the run-up to that. That's the other 10 people who died from the morning of the 12th up to the afternoon of I think it's the afternoon of the 14th.
Yes.
That's Sunday morning to the Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
I am not sure that I got a response to what I put to you, Mr. Minister. Could you remember what I put to you?
Response, as I understand it, was that he was talking about, amongst others, the 34 people who died on the 16th, which is effectively the point that you were putting to him, was it not?
Yes. But I'm not sure whether those other people who he was referring to as anarchists.
But already he said by anarchists he meant, amongst others anyway, those among the strikers who were involved in the acts of violence and intimidation over the week from the 10th or the 11th running up to the 16th. That's what he said. But he did say that he wasn't referring to all the strikers, all 3,000 or 4,000 of them, but only those who had participated in acts of violence and malicious damage and so forth. I think that's a summary of what you said.
Precisely, Chair.
Mr. Minister, the chairman is giving a generous interpretation of what you say, but in your speech you didn't say it. You didn't say, now look, I'm just isolating.
Mr. Mthethwa, I was summarizing his evidence here.
I just want to put it to you because I want to argue this. I want to put it to you, Mr. Minister, that in your address, it is not clear, in fact, the distinction that is being given to what you are saying by the chair is not clear. In your speech, it is very, very clear that you regard those people whom the members of the SAPS killed, whom the general was praising in the context of telling them that you did virtually nothing wrong. You don't say there only those among those who were killed who were killed because they are anarchists. What comes across is that all the protesters, including those who were killed, are anarchists.
Well, Chair, that would be Mr. Nsebeza's interpretation. But I think I have clarified what I was saying. He'd be entitled to his view, which I don't agree with.
And I will want to...
Sorry, Chair. Let me just add this, that the emphasis here is about professionalism, that police should be doing their job professionally. I just wanted to add that.
Yes. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'll need a further indulgence of about 15 minutes. I know that I have now 5 minutes. I just want to further suggest to you, Mr. Minister, that what you say today, which is a reflection of what you said in your speech there, does not sit well with your response to Mr. Bezos yesterday. Yesterday, you came across as suggesting that you didn't regard the protesters as criminals. In fact, you didn't say any of them yesterday were regarded by you as criminals. Now, today, the objective evidence says something else. You say they were anarchists. They were running amok. They can't be allowed to do so. They are undermining the rule of law in the process. That, I put to you, is a clear contradiction of what you tried to communicate to Mr. Bezos yesterday.
You wish to comment, wish to reply to? It's an implied question. You wish to reply
Yes.
to?
Well, Chair, I still say that people who were there, who went out to strike, did that not as criminals. And we don't regard those people generally as criminals. But those who were involved in the loss of lives of other people, of other citizens, of damage to property, and so on, would not evade being labeled as anarchists and as criminals because those actions were criminal.
You know, Mr. Minister, yesterday you made a very profound statement when you ended your examination in chief. And it was this. And I may not be quoting you verbatim. You said, what happened should never have happened in a democracy. You remember saying that?
Yes.
Now, I don't know what you meant by that. But I just want to take you through epoch-making slaughtering of the people by the SAPS in the history of our country.
Chair, I think this sensationalization is to be discouraged. Using words such as massacre and slaughtering, it's unfair really, because there is no evidence to suggest that people went out to actively slaughter and massacre people.
Well, that's a matter you can argue at the end. It's not a basis of
But it's
objection.
sensationalizing this thing, and it's unfair.
I don't understand that the fact that this question is asked in a sensational fashion or anything of that kind is necessarily a basis for disallowing it. A fair amount of grandstanding has happened in this commission. It's difficult to stop it, but I'm not going to disallow the question. I have, however, in the past,
I know, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mpofu to order,
Yeah.
when he's used the word massacre, I've said whether it's a massacre, it depends on the finding we'll make at the end, whether the police acted in self-defense. And he, with a characteristic grace, accepted the ruling. I would expect you to do the same. Please ask the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the last 10 minutes that I have, I want to...
Time is actually up, but never mind. Ask the question, let's get the answer.
Yes,
then
Mr.
your
Chairman.
next colleague can take over.
You know, Mr. Minister, on a scale, you know, when you made that remark yesterday, I reflected on what I say I've reflected. And it struck me that the killings by the police of those civilians in 2012 was the largest killing on any one day by the police since the 21st of March 1960. Did you get the question?
Sorry, could you please...
I say it struck me yesterday when you made that profound statement that that kind of killing should never have happened in a democracy, or the tragedy as you put it, that it was actually the largest number of people who were killed by the police in a space of about an hour on all the objective evidence since 1961 on the 21st of March, where I think about 69 people were killed. You recall that from your knowledge of history. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And I reflected also that 25 years after 1960, when there was a commemoration of Shabril in Utenik in 1985 on the 21st of March, again, between 20 to 48 people as estimates ran. The South African police killed people in what came to be known as another Langa massacre. You recall that?
Yes, I would recall.
And the last incident that I recalled when I reflected on your evidence, was one that should be close to your heart. Because it took place at a time when the ANC and the SACP and all political parties which had been proscribed had been unbanned. It is my matter that came to us in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It took place at a time when there was a debate in the country at Kempton Park for the transition of our society to a democracy. And it came with such a shock because it took place on the 7th of September 1992. And you will know about this because your deputy president was among those ANC supporters who had gone to Bisho. And the event became known as the Bisho Massacre. 28 supporters of the ANC were killed in that mayhem. One military soldier. You can take it for granted that I'm putting to you because it's a matter that came to us in the TRC. You recall about that massacre. It was called a Bisho massacre under the tin pot dictator, Obagozo. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
You see, the point I want to make about this, Mr. Minister, is that all of those massacres, because they were called by that name, and I'm sure even by you in the ANC, were described as such because the view was that nothing at all can ever justify the mowing down of citizens in that fashion. Would you agree with me?
Yes, except that there was no attempt to deal with those things the way this matter is being dealt with.
Of course, that's afterwards, you say. I agree with you. Is an ex post facto attempt to justify what you characterize as something that should never have happened. This is what I want to put to you. The 36 or the 37 families whom I represent. Mr. Bezos told you about the family of Mr. Lendingwane, whom he represents. Those communities want to hear one thing and one thing from you, and hopefully from the Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, if and when he comes. That you, as a member of a government founded on the constitutional values of freedom, foundational freedom, dignity, and equality. What those families want to hear from you, Mr. Minister, is that nothing at all in a democracy should ever justify the police killing its own people. The police are well trained in other mechanisms that can contain whatever is being done by protesters, short of killing them in that fashion.
I take it that's your point, Mr. Zibede.
Yes.
How do you respond to that point, Minister?
Chair, the point is in line with what I was saying yesterday, that such things or such a thing should not happen in a democracy. And I would want to concur with what Mr. Nsebeza is saying on that it really shouldn't happen. In fact, Chair, I'm on record as calling on the public and especially institutions, research institutions and everybody to dialogue the national discourse in South Africa. Because without dealing with the violent nature of the national discourse in our country, that everything which people want over and above the guarantees in the Constitution, still people would feel that they need to be violent. And in this instance, I'm not specifically talking about this matter, but I concur with what Mr. Nsebeza is saying, that everything, and I'm very confident that the outcome of this very honorable commission will put us on a pedestal where such acts are not seen in South Africa. That's how.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nsebeza. I think Ms. Barnes, you're next, aren't you?
No, Chair. I believe Mr. Mpofu is going to cross-examine next.
Mr. Mpofu. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mpofu. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. Matt. Thanks.
You want me to take we've been sitting for just under an hour and a quarter. You want me to take the first comfort break now, or would you prefer to get your cross-examination underway, as it were, before we do that? I'm in your hands.
Chairperson, I'll appreciate if you take the break now, because also there might be some discussion on the sequence in that break. Yeah.
We'll take the first comfort break for a quarter of an hour.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Can
Tomorrow? No, not anymore.
I can't print the act, it's secured. I can't
I'll
print
do
it,
it.
it's secured. I've googled it, I found it, yes, but you can't print
Let me get rid of this.
it. No, I think, I saw it.
Yeah.
But where's that? Nathi, hello, where am I? Check some cash. Looks like we are winning. Looks like we are winning.
Mission resumes. I'm sorry it's a bit later than we thought, but we had some housekeeping matters to attend to in the interim. Minister, you are still bound by your affirmation.
Yes.
Mr. Mpofu.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Did you want to hand in by way of housekeeping before we start?
Yes, Chairperson, yes.
Have you got documents or not, Mr. Mpofu?
I do, Chairperson.
You want to hand them in now, or would you want to do it later if you're not ready?
Let's do it later, Chairperson. It looks like I'm one copy short for the bench, for yourself.
All right, yes, no, we haven't got them yet. All right, carry on as best you can.
With
for
what
the
I
moment.
have, yes. Thank you,
And
Chairperson.
perhaps during the tea adjournment mathematically.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Minister.
Morning, Mr. Pof.
We have a bit of a time issue, so I'm going to try and...
Putting it gently, Mr. Mpofu.
Yeah, that's putting it very gently. I'm going to try and adopt an approach which might save us time by first asking you a few questions to signpost my cross-examination, as it were. You have addressed, and we will deal with this later, the issue of perceived or real political pressure. And you have denied having exerted such political pressure, correct?
Yes.
And that is because you know that to do so would have been a transgression of the constitutional obligations that you have to exert such pressure. Would amount to that, correct?
Yes.
And it would be against the law or what you call the legal framework which governs your position, correct?
Yes.
And Similarly, if anyone had exerted or caused you to exert political pressure onto the Marikana situation, that would also be against the law, correct?
Yes.
And thirdly, in the same vein, if anyone in the operational management of the police had taken decisions or acted as a result of political pressure, that would also be against the law in that sense.
Yes, it would be.
Thank you. And in fact, in your case, the implications would be very far-reaching and serious if indeed you exerted political pressure which resulted in the deaths of 34 people.
Correct.
That would be such a serious matter that it would have serious implications to you politically and personally, correct?
It would.
Politically, it would mean that effectively you were unfit for your office, correct?
It would mean a lot of things.
One of them would be that you are unfit for your office?
Well, that would be a judgment by the people who put you in the office, but it would be
serious. It has serious implications.
yes.
Right?
I think I've said yes.
No, well, answer again.
You said yes.
No, I don't answer twice one question.
Well,
No,
I'm
no,
asking
I'm
you
I'm
again.
talking to Mr. Mpofu. He said yes, Mr. Mpofu. How many times do you
Yeah,
want to
well, I
say yes?
didn't hear. But
No, we've heard it now.
I don't want attitude from the witness, Chairperson. Please.
Let's not have aptitude for either of you. Let's
Yeah.
just carry on.
Thank you.
Keep the temperature
Okay,
down. You'll be
yeah.
more successful in your cross-examination.
That's fine.
No, but
Mr.
the
Nkosi,
decorum has to be, indeed, Chair, I'm in full agreement.
Oh,
He
yes,
must
yes,
stick
exactly.
to the decorum.
I've
He
spoken
can't.
to Mr. Mpofu in the
Yes.
past about delivering concurring judgments when I gave a ruling.
Yeah.
It applies to you too. Carry on, Mr. Mpofu. Let's keep the temperature down.
Yeah, I will, Chairperson. But let it not be risen. Otherwise, I can rise up to it. Okay, now, one of the implications at a personal level, which would be serious, would be that you would have been implicated if you had, and this is a big if, of course, I know you have denied it. If you had exerted such pressure, then you would have been implicated in the murders of those people, correct?
It would depend what kind of pressure, but now we're talking hypothesis.
Sorry,
no-
sorry, before you carry on, I don't know it's appropriate to use the word murder in the context.
You know?
One of the issues here is whether the police acted in self-defense, and if they did, it wasn't a murder. So you can't put it on the basis it's to be accepted it was a murder. We may, at the end of the day, make findings upholding submissions you may make on the point, but we may not. So put the question in a more neutral fashion.
No, Chairperson, I think there's a misunderstanding. I understand that point correctly very much. Remember that we have made certain statements in our opening statement. Obviously, they presuppose, and you're quite right, they presuppose certain things. But surely I'm entitled to put, maybe let me preface it by this.
This way, if you are correct in
That's
saying
correct. That's
that
what-
members of the police committed murder,
Yeah.
then what you're saying is the minister would, as it were, be an accomplice or implicit in that.
Yes.
A co-accused, as it were.
Thank you, Chairperson. That's
that's your
really,
point.
yes.
All right.
Unfortunately, the time pressure, gives us...
You've
let me
heard the
do...
questions modified. What's your answer?
I answered and I said it will depend what is that interference all about.
Okay, no. Again, you'll forgive me because, as I say, this is based on a hypothesis that you have denied.
Yeah.
What I'm saying to you is this. If indeed you exerted pressure which resulted in the unlawful killings of 34 people, then you would be implicated in those alleged murders. Let me put it that way. Correct?
As I said, this is hypothetical situation.
Yes.
I exerted no pressure.
But if you had, it would...
I exerted no pressure to anyone.
No,
Yes.
he's asking a hypothetical question. Your answer, you already answered. is it would depend on the circumstance.
Yes.
And depend on the pressure. If you
Absolutely.
said to the police, disarm them using force if necessary,
Yeah.
and in the process of doing that, murders were committed, it wouldn't necessarily follow from the instruction you gave them, which you say you didn't give.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't necessarily follow the instruction you gave them that you were telling them disarm them in circumstances that would amount to a murder. So the answer you give is
You have summed it up,
it's a
Chairperson.
nuanced answer.
That's what I said.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I'm saying that all those niceties would be resolved one day in a criminal court. I'm saying to you, if you had exerted pressure which resulted in the deaths of people, you would at least have to be facing allegations of being complicit to murder. Whether you succeed in court or not is not none of what I'm asking for. Do you understand that? In other words, if someone says...
Pressure.
Yes.
Pressure.
Sorry, Minister.
Listen, I'm on the floor. Pressure has to be clarified. What pressure is that? The kind of pressure will determine what you would be responsible for because of that pressure, or what you are not going to be responsible for because of that pressure. Right now, we're talking something in the dark. You don't even know what you are talking about.
No.
It's an Chair, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Is that your answer? Okay, look, no, you are the only one in the dark. I have said to you that if the
I
pressure...
have answered this question. I have
Mr. Paul,
answered this question.
I'm not sure I heard what you said, but whatever it was a comment. Don't make comments, just ask questions. Mrs. Minion?
Well, the comment was he may be the only one in the dark.
Yeah,
And
he
that's
said
not
we are
enough.
in the dark.
No, it was a comment. It was a comment. And I said you
Correct.
mustn't make comments. You must ask questions. So let's move on.
Yeah. I'm asking you a very simple question. If you had exerted such pressure as would have resulted in the deaths of 34 people, you would therefore be liable to be charged with murder.
I have said it depends what pressure you are talking about. Can you be explicit and tell me what pressure are you talking about,
Yes.
Mr. Mbofu?
Okay, I'll be very explicit. It's the pressure that you actually did exert, which is to say that you are being pressurized by Mr. Ramaphosa, and you phoned the provincial commissioner to tell her that. I'm saying if that pressure somehow had resulted in the deaths of 34 people, you would be liable for those deaths, correct?
Mr. Chairperson, the proposition that's been put to the witness does not accord with the evidence that is before this commission. There is no evidence.
I've got a more fundamental problem. It's really a conclusion of law that he's being asked to give. But you are wrong on the facts. The facts are that according to the provincial commissioner, she was told by the national commissioner.
I'm coming to that, Chairperson. I'd rather don't spoil my cross-examination.
There's no evidence that I'm aware of that this witness spoke to the provincial commissioner and told her that he'd received a phone call from Mr. Ramaphosa. That's my recollection.
Doesn't matter, really. Okay. Would it make a difference to my question whether you put that pressure on the national commissioner or the provincial commissioner?
You formulate the question in accordance with the allegations before us on the
Yes.
evidence.
Okay.
And then the witness can answer.
Yeah. Subject to that correction, that is the pressure I'm talking about. Now, can you answer the question?
There is no pressure which was put either to me by anybody else or myself to the officials who were working under my leadership.
Yes. But Chairperson, I have a problem here. The witness is, in my view, now evading the question. I've asked a series of questions in this vein, which he has answered. That you understand, Minister, that I have said to all the questions that you have answered, if indeed you had put that pressure, and I've even qualified to say I accept that you have denied. Do you understand that?
I think there's a simple way of solving the problem. I don't think the witness is evading the question, but never mind. Let's proceed.
I'm sure you don't.
Let's move forward. What Mr. Mpofu really is about is this: is if it's ultimately established that you put improper pressure. You brought improper pressure to bear on either the national commissioner or the provincial commissioner to do things which they wouldn't otherwise have done, which resulted in the death of the 34 people. You might well find yourself being charged with criminal conduct. That's the question he's asking you. It's a hypothetical question, but it's necessary, I think, for the question he's going to ask you thereafter. Now, what's your answer to that?
My answer, Chair, is that if, as I said earlier on, it depends what pressure are you talking about. If the pressure is such that it caused people to do things outside of the law, like murdering, then indeed, whoever was part of that process and decision would be liable, including the minister.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now, the next, as I said, I'm just signposting. We're going to come to those issues. The other issue that I wanted to signpost is you have said effectively that your remarks about the use of maximum force, fight fire with fire, and all that are directed at criminals. You were at pains to distinguish with Mr. Bezos that those remarks were directed at criminals, not at citizens in general.
I specified the category of people I was talking about yesterday to Mr. Bezos.
Yes.
But over and above that, this country has laws, and there is Section 49 of the Criminal Procedure Act, which governs how the use of firearm should be.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid Section 49 does not feature in this. It doesn't. It's about people being arrested. But anyway, be that as it may,
can be relevant in the broad context in which he was speaking at the time. It deals with the amount of force that can be used when an arrest is effected. There were problems in regard to the interpretation of the section. The Constitutional Court ironed them out, but it said the section should be redrafted to make it clear to Constable Plod and others who read the section what exactly the law is, and that was in due course done. So, but of course it's not relevant for us.
Yes.
We're not concerned with people who died while arrests were being attempted. We're concerned with people who died, it is said by the police, while they were defending themselves and their colleagues.
That's the point I'm making.
49 isn't relevant to us, but it was relevant, to be fair to him, in the context in which he was speaking before the Portfolio Committee, I think it was.
No, I'm not talking about the Portfolio Committee. I'm talking about his answer now. So it's irrelevant, at least that we're clear. It's irrelevant to the Marikana situation. And you are saying that that category of people, as you call it, to whom fire must be fought with fire and maximum force and all those things, were not the people who were at the mountain. Correct?
I was not talking about those people. I was talking about people who were involved in bank robberies and cash in transit heist.
Yes. So that would exclude the people at the mountain, correct?
That's what we were talking about in the context of yesterday.
Can you just answer the question simply?
As I say.
Does it exclude them?
If you ask me about what happened yesterday, what we were discussing yesterday, we were discussing about the issue of usage of firearms, the fighting fire with fire, which referred to those specific people. Yesterday we were talking about that.
Yes. Okay, let's forget yesterday. Today, does those categories exclude the people at the mountain?
Yeah, what we were talking about yesterday exclude those people.
No, I'm asking you about what I'm talking about today.
He said that, Mr. Pofu. He said what he was talking about yesterday doesn't apply to the people on the mountain. He was talking about cash heists and so forth yesterday. Today he's talking about Marikana, and he's already conceded, as I understand him, that those sentiments he expressed didn't apply to the people of Marikana.
Yeah,
That's what
but-
you want. So
No, I want a yes, Chairperson, not a long, convoluted answer.
you've got the
Or
answer anyway.
to help the witness unnecessarily. Thank you. Okay. So it's a yes.
Again, yes.
Thank you. So those people at the mountain, you did not regard them as criminals. You've already answered that, I think. You also did not regard them as anarchists, correct?
Yes, you take that and add with the discussion we had this morning, and you have the answer.
Is the answer yes?
The answer is found in what we discussed yesterday and today, that those who were killing others were criminals.
Listen, can you please answer the questions that I'm asking you without reference to any other cross-examination, unless if I ask you a question that refers to other cross-examination?
I am saying to you that people who went out on strike didn't do so as criminals. They did so as workers who were demanding their rights or whatever they wanted.
Wages, yes.
The people who amongst them kill others were criminals.
And the police to kill others, are they criminals as well?
If they are found to be so, yes, they will be criminals.
Yeah, but the others, unqualified, are criminals. But if the police is if this, if that, is that your evidence?
There is a law governing how firearms should be used. There is a justifiable situation. There is unjustifiable situation. Those who are using firearms unjustifiably, yes, would be criminals.
Yes, but you yes, that's a better answer. So you don't know even of those people who were in the mountain who might have done whatever justifiably. That might be determined in a court later, correct?
As I've said, that we are talking about the usage of firearms by the police, and we're talking about people who killed others. And I'm saying that those who did that, it is a criminal act. It's not if, it's a criminal act.
How do you know, Minister, if I may ask?
No. If somebody kills another, then that person, and we are saying it's justifiable, that would be the court to decide. But the act of killing someone else, who for whatever reason you don't agree with, is a criminal act.
Okay. Well, on that basis, then the police committed criminal acts because they killed other people.
Well, that's your opinion.
Well, no, you're the one who has given us the legal opinion. The question is whether that legal opinion of yours also applies to the police, or does it only apply to South African citizens who are not members of SABC?
The police are by law have a right to carry firearms, have a right to use firearms when necessary. And within the bounds of the law, they would have to do that. But if they do it outside of the law, then they are not justifiable to have done that.
Yeah, but that applies to everybody. I also have a right to carry a gun. I have a right to use it. I have a right to kill people within the bounds of the law.
No.
So what's the difference?
No, you don't have a right to carry. You don't have a right to carry dangerous weapons in public, and even using those dangerous weapons. By law, you are not allowed.
Of course, Thomas, you turned your light on. You want to say something? You're repenting.
No, just to say, Chair, that to the extent that Mr. Mpofu seeks to elicit opinion, evidence on matters of law, that's not going to assist this commission in any manner whatsoever. So perhaps he should stick to the factual inquiry as opposed to seeking to elicit evidence, rather opinion evidence, as it were.
Mr. Mpofu.
Well, Chairperson, I'm not doing anything of the sort.
All right.
I'm
If
not
you're
the one.
not doing anything of the sort, then just carry on.
Yes, thank you. All right, so I think the real answer is that you could not, sitting there, label the people sitting at the mountain as criminals. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but I have said to you that there are people who were involved and engaged in criminal acts and in acts of breaking the law. That I said.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be proved in the court of law. You are not by law allowed to carry dangerous weapons. Period.
All right, let me just round off the previous point. Would it be fair to say the following? I'm sorry I just want to finish off the point we spoke about a bit earlier. Given the fact that you have considered that your maximum force statements referred to people other than those at the mountain, would you agree that then the use of maximum force had no applicability to the people at the mountain?
As I said to you, that the utilization of firearms is a governed process. Whether it's justifiable to use it or not depends on what the law says about the utilization of a firearm by a police officer.
Yes, I'm sorry, maybe it's my fault. I didn't ask the question properly.
Mr. is actually dealing with a slightly different topic at the moment. He's not confining himself to firearms. He's talking about the doctrine of minimum force and the corollary there too, the use of maximum force, which is an expression that you use on one occasion at least. And he's asking you whether you accept that maximum force, whether it was by use of firearm or any other kind of force, whether maximum force could appropriately be used to deal with the Marikana situation. That's your question, Mr. Mpofu. Am I right?
Yeah, that's correct, Chairperson. Sorry.
Ordinarily not, Chair. Strictly speaking, when there are public protests, there is no expectation of using maximum force or deadly force at that. When people are out there protesting, there is no immediate expectation to use such force.
Do you know that the law places an obligation on members of the of SABC to use minimum force?
If you talk generally, yes.
No.
It also places its minimum force, but it also explains when to use deadly force.
Trouble is, I'm sorry to interrupt now, but it's the point I was going to ask you later, but I think I'll raise it now to get it out of the way. Trouble is the expression of maximum force is susceptible to misinterpretation. So I understand the position. The police are obliged, not just the police, but others generally, but let's confine ourselves to the police. Police are confined are obliged by the laws applicable to them and their standing orders when dealing with a violent situation to use only such force as is necessary. That is what minimum force is about. No more than is strictly necessary, actually. You can, of course, have a situation, really rare, I would think, but you can have a situation where you've got to use all the force at your disposal. It's necessary to use all the force at your disposal to deal with the situation. Your paramilitary gangs are engaged in cash heists, may be an example in certain circumstances. And that's a case where, paradoxically, the maximum force available is necessary. So therefore, it's also the minimum force available which is necessary. So paradoxically, minimum force equals maximum force in those circumstances. But to talk about maximum force in general is misleading. In the case I'm talking about, it's correct that in a sense it's maximum force, but it's also minimum force. And it's not an exception to the rule that minimum force must be used. Now, you unfortunately, before the Portfolio Committee or in the interview with the Cape Argus, used the expression maximum force, I think in the sense in which I've used it. But it could lead to misinterpretation. In fact, I take it you would say it has, because Mr. Bruce, in his book, and the CASAC people in that document that you looked at, have interpreted what you said as saying minimum force is no longer the rule, the doctrine that applies, it's now maximum force. Now, I take it that's not what you meant. You meant what I've explained. Is that correct?
Well, I think you are touching on the fundamental question, Chair, the necessity or the necessary part. But it would be amiss if the people you are referring to misinterpreted what we were saying, because we're explicit on who are we talking about at that point. Yes. One. But two, we had explained that this is not a license to kill. No trigger-happy police have a place within SABC. So I don't know if they misinterpreted that.
See, the problem is what you said, I'm expressing a prima facie view, what you said was susceptible to misinterpretation.
Oh.
And Constable Plod, if one can mention him, Constable Plod may well have misinterpreted what you said and thought you meant he could use maximum force even where it was more than was necessary. I think you didn't mean that. But the trouble is, you may have been misunderstood. But that's really the point that's being debated at the moment. What Mr. Mpofu is saying to you, as I understand him, is that maximum force, which is more than is necessary, was not appropriate for Marikana. And I take it you agree with that.
More than, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no. Firstly, I can put money on it that when you were using the word minimum force, and you can confirm, you didn't have in mind this esoteric and exceptional situation where there's a coincidence between all that's really not what you had in mind. That's a nice hypothesis, but that's not what you had in mind, correct?
I don't get your question.
No, I'm saying when you were saying maximum force can be justified, you did not have in mind a situation where that is the same thing as minimum force, whatever that means. I don't even understand it myself. But you didn't postulate that situation, correct?
The question.
So,
let me explain something to you so you and everyone else can understand. Minimum force means no more than is strictly necessary. That's what minimum force means. You mustn't use more force than is strictly necessary. If it's strictly necessary to use all the force at your command, then you're still applying minimum force. And that's not what did you say, esoteric? That's not an esoteric distinction.
Well, exceptional.
It's exceptional, yes, it's exceptional. And in a sense, it's paradoxical, but it doesn't mean it's not valid. Anyway, the real question that you're being asked by Mr. Mpofu is, when you said that maximum force must be used, in the context which was quoted in that paper that was the CASAC put forward, in what sense did you mean it? That's what Mr. Mpofu wants to know.
Yes.
Well, it was in a specific situation of a specific category of people we were referring to. Yeah. And what we meant is that you use everything you can use to stop this thing from happening.
Yes. Okay. That's exactly the problem. I'm saying it is against the law to have a specific category of people for whom you are going to reserve maximum force per se. That is against the law.
Chair.
And what you were propagating was against the law, and I'll tell you which law.
The proposition is completely incorrect in law. You cannot put that proposition to a witness.
I can. It is against the law, I repeat the proposition, to have a specific category of people for whom you must reserve maximum force. Maximum force cannot be used against any category of people by law.
I think we're probably engaged in semantic difficulties at the moment. There can be no category of persons per se
Sure.
against whom force can be used which is more than is necessary. But what the witness is, I think, is trying to say, although remember, to be fair to him, he's not a lawyer. We won't hold that against him. That's not a crime either. Though some people... what the minister is saying, that he regarded catch and heist people as people against, in respect of whom it was necessary to use all the force that was available.
Yeah.
Once you understand the distinction I've tried to explain, you understand what he's trying to
Yeah,
say.
I understand. I don't care whether it's cash and hazard or rapists or mass murderers or whatever. You cannot have a category of people who are reserved for maximum force per se. That is the law. Simple.
The point is, it's not the category of persons we're concerned with, it's the circumstances. If the circumstances are such that you have to use, it's necessary to use all the force at your command, then it's minimum force and maximum force coincide. But it's not because you're dealing with a category of people. You're dealing with people in circumstances where that necessity to use all the force you have exists. That's the distinction.
Absolutely. And the circumstances in this case was referring to specific people who were doing a specific act. Not that they are reserved as that per se, but through what they have done, through what they were continuing to do, precisely. It was the circumstances around which they were doing.
Okay, let me just tell you, just for the benefit of my learned friends as well, what the law actually says. It's Section 13, 3B of the Police Act specifically says, where a member performs an official duty, or rather, where a member who performs an official duty is authorized by law to use force, he or she may use only the minimum force which is reasonable in the circumstances. Now, what that means is that there is already a rule in the common law about necessary force, what the chairperson was talking to you about. I'm saying that in the Police Act, despite the fact that there is that common law rule, there is a specific section that says where you are entitled to use force, whether it's the Section 49 situation, whether it's the whatever situation, cash in transit, what have you, you shall only, or you may use only the minimum force which is reasonable in the circumstances. Are you aware of that provision of the law?
Yes, you must read that with Section 49 of the Criminal Procedure Act. It exists also. Can you go there?
Yeah,
well?
no. You see, let me tell you. Where it says, where is authorized by law to use force, that incorporates Section 49. Section 49 simply authorizes the police to use force. So whether Section 49...
force.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes, all it says is that where you are authorized to use force, and that includes Section 49.
We cannot have legal arguments with a lay witness.
The point is saying there's a very interesting legal seminar we're having, but I don't think, with respect, that it's advancing the cause of this commission very much to enable us to answer the question set out in terms of reference. I understand you were setting up, as it were, a preparatory framework for the purposes of your cross-examination.
Wow.
You and the witness have had a debate about what the law is. You've got, some would say, perhaps an advantage because you're legally trained. Others would say he's got an advantage because he wasn't confused by what he learned at law school. But either way, I think that matter has been adequately covered. I suggest you move on now.
Well, Chairperson, I'm not the one who spoke about maximum force. It's the witness. So if now suddenly, when I'm testing what he said, it's a legal seminar, then I don't know what cross-examination is about. I'm saying...
You've covered the points.
Yes.
You've covered the points. I made an intervention which may not
yes,
have been well advised. the minister may well not have expressed himself in the same language a lawyer would use, but I think we now know what he says he meant, and I think you can now proceed with your cross-examination, with the theoretical structure that you're setting up before you proceed to the other question.
Yeah. No, okay, well, I might as well round off this point to show that it's not theoretical. Is it triple F4, I think, is the...
4 was the private briefing for the president on what happened.
Then it's triple F5.
Triple F5 was the media statement made by the National Commissioner.
Yes. Can we have triple F5? What is the next page, Sarah? Just carry on a little bit. Yeah, there it is.
You see at the foot of the page, which is on the screen. You'll see that the second the penultimate paragraph begins, the dispersion action had commenced, etc. And it describes what happened at scene 2, actually. And it ends up, well, I'm not sure how accurate the description is, but we won't go there now. The last sentence reads, the police retreated systematically and were forced to utilize maximum force to defend themselves. That's the passage Mr. Mthethwa is relying on.
That was, do you go along with that?
I wouldn't understand this.
Well, did you when the National Commissioner was saying it, did you say to her, or gave you the document, did you say to her, I don't understand that last sentence?
No, I'm saying I don't understand. There is a sentence here which talks about police retreating.
Chair.
So what is the question here?
Chair, before...
No.
It goes on, you see, police retreated systematically and were forced to utilize maximum force to defend themselves. So he's concentrating on the maximum force expression there.
Right.
Mr. Semenya?
Chair, the views of this witness today are completely irrelevant to the terms of reference. We are invited by the terms of reference to look at things that causally are connected from a particular period in 2012, not today.
Yeah.
Not as simple as that. We're investigating the facts. We've got to look at the justifications made by the actors at the time. And this was a justification put up by the National Commissioner. She said maximum force was used. The political head of the police was present, either present when she said it or he read what she said on the same day she said it. And I don't think I can...
Chair, with respect, the Commissioner was asked these questions. She answered what she meant about them. But the question now being asked of the witness is, today, what is his view? Does he associate himself with the utterances of another witness 2 years ago?
No, obviously that's not the question. And by the way, Chairperson, without concurring with what you're saying, the point really is that if... Yes.
I didn't put that didn't go on record. Mr. Semenya, you say Mr. Semenya misunderstood your question.
Yes.
Give him a second chance to understand it by repeating it.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. You've already testified that either this statement was read in your presence, if not, it was given to you, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I'm saying to you, when you were given that statement saying what the Chairperson has read out to you, did you say you don't understand what was meant by that sentence?
I said I don't understand your question.
My question
Not
is...
the sentence.
Yeah, did you agree with that, or did you query it at the time?
He couldn't agree because he didn't know the facts.
No,
didn't
He didn't know whether the factual allegations were correct.
No.
So That's so.
It could not be correct to use maximum force, and that's the whole point, Chairperson. How could
Well-
it didn't matter. The point is, did you, at that time, think that there was occasion to use maximum force or not?
I don't know the answer to that because he didn't know the circumstances. All hearsay is what he was concerned. Perhaps the best way to approach it is this. What did you understand her to mean when she said that maximum force had been used? It's relevant because, of course, we heard you say things later that day which may give rise to some comment elsewhere. But what did you understand her to mean when she said that the police were forced to utilize maximum force?
Live ammunition.
Okay. And is that your understanding, again, to the use of live ammunition equals maximum force?
What I understood here is that the police, as it is said here, that they were forced. And because remember, this thing is explaining what happened. And it still needs to be tested that it happened this way. That the police on their own retreated, as it is said here, and used maximum force to defend themselves.
It's further than that. It says they were forced to utilize maximum force.
They were forced.
So the very use of the word forced indicates that what was being asserted was it was necessary for them, because that's why they were forced to do it, to use maximum force. And you use the expression maximum force, meaning lethal force or potentially lethal force, which could kill, in fact did kill, a number of the people against whom it was used. That's the way you understood it. Am I accurately summarizing your evidence?
Yes, Chair.
Right, we'll come back to that. Now, the issue about, the other issue that I wanted to ask you in this category of questions is around the proposals for public policing which you made in 2011. You remember those?
Yes.
This is Exhibit Quadruple C 1.1.
EN2 is 1.2. It's 0.2, Chairperson.
No. 2 is the implementation plan. The letter to the National Commissioner is 1.1.
Yes, I was talking about the plan. Yeah. Now, do you believe that if that plan had been in full swing, in full operational swing, or implementation swing, the massacre or tragedy would have been avoided?
Asking might or would?
Would.
There's a difference.
Would.
Firstly, the policy on gathering, on the Gatherings Act first, and the policy we were amending, assumes that things are happening in a particular way. There is a legal process, there were protests, and nobody is armed, and it should fit that kind of a situation. And in that sense, there is nothing which prepares police to govern or to control crowd who would otherwise be armed in the situation.
No. Well, that can be correct. Remember that the definition of crowd management includes violent and non-violent protests. Do you know that?
It does.
Yes.
But what I'm saying to you is that you move from the premise that the public protests themselves and picketing and everything should be done and is allowed to be done within the law and the Constitution, but unarmed.
Yes, but surely violent protests must include armed protest, doesn't it?
That's what I'm saying, is that we are now talking outside of the law. Now, I'm saying that in terms of the law and the Constitution, is that people are allowed, and this is the point everybody, including you, should be preaching out in society, are allowed by the laws of the land and the Constitution to do everything, including demonstration, picketing, but unarmed.
Yes, but But that is mightily irrelevant to what we are discussing. Though people who are unarmed, and as you are describing, are not people to whom the issue of use of force even applies, correct? It doesn't even arise. Agreed?
I don't understand your point.
Okay.
Can you put it?
I'm saying the situation that you are describing of correctly the constitutional right of people to march and so on and picket has got nothing to do with the use of force. We're talking about a different situation where there is a need for the use of force.
Yes.
You agree? Okay. Now, what I'm saying to you is if that policy was in full implementation swing, this tragedy would have been avoided. What would you say to that?
Well, I wouldn't be certain about that because we've got to examine the actual action, the actual process which led to the death of people who were striking, first and foremost. And I think this is what we are about.
Do you say that would is a bit too ambitious? You can't say what would have happened. But the other part of the question that he eventually withdrew was might. What is your opinion on the question? You're able to formulate one. If what you had said in your policy on policing of gatherings and protests, in your letter of the 31st of August 2011, had been implemented with immediate effect, as you had asked the National Commissioner to do, instead of only getting the response that you asked for to be given to you the end of September 2011, you only got that in February 2013, after Marikana had happened. If your request that the matter be dealt with immediate effect, and you got the implementation policy by the end of September 2011, and all the necessary things had been done, what Mr. Mthethwa, I think, wants to know from you is, do you think that what happened to Marikana might not have occurred?
Chair, you would recall yesterday that we said that whilst the letter came back on the 13th, things relating to the policy had started to happen, including the procurement of the equipment, including training of the police officers who were no longer part of the unit of public order policing. So it's not like nothing happened between 2011 to 2013. What the point we're making is that not everything is intact, and we specified the kind of weaknesses which are still there. But that's what I would say about the policy and the implementation of the policy.
Chairperson, I want to try for the last time to get an answer to this. Do you believe that had the policy which you recommended, which was obviously intended to improve the situation, had it been in full operational swing, the possibility, at least, I accept that you can't foretell the future, the possibility of the tragedy having happened would have been reduced. Let's put it as light as that.
Okay, Mr. Mpofu, when we talk about the implementation of the policy, let's be clear of what we're talking about. We need to disaggregate what we are talking about, because there are a lot of things involved. There's training involved. There's the equipment. So which part are you referring to as inadequate? Because inadequacy would always be there. For instance, Northwest as a province was so inadequate to deal with this matter of the strike, it needed to have assistance from other provinces. So when you talk inadequacy, let's be specific, because if you are generalizing, I may not be able to help you in your question, but I want to help you understanding clearly which part are you referring to.
Okay. Well, you might help me firstly by listening to the question. I didn't say anything about inadequacy.
Yeah, don't give him a lecture, just ask questions. Please, just
Well,
wait.
I did not say anything about inadequacy, so the past 3 minutes has just been wasted. I'm saying if the policy that you proposed was in full implementation swing, would you agree that the massacre or tragedy might have been avoided, or the chances of it happening would have been reduced? Yes or no?
I wish to agree with you, but in all fairness, what you are talking about is something which has no clarity. We are asking a question, but when you say full swing, the full swing you are referring to would have components. Full swing because there's enough equipment for police to work, there's enough personnel. So you'd have to be specific, because clearly there is a part you are criticizing, so that I agree with you on that or not agree with on it.
Okay. Please don't anticipate my question as criticizing something or another. Just answer the question as it is. I am saying to you, full swing obviously means full swing, 100%. I didn't say there's a part.
Well, if it's 100%, yes. If it was
answer is
implemented 100%, as we are saying now, yes, maybe
Thank you.
there would have been
Reduced
averting or reduction of any fatalities.
Phew, thank you. And that must be why you had asked as long ago as 31st August 2011 that the policy needed to be implemented with immediate effect. Correct?
Correct, yes.
So, asking the same question differently now. If the policy had been implemented with immediate effect fully, then the tragedy would have been avoided, correct?
Would believe so.
Yes. Now, so among the causes or the things that might have contributed to the tragedy must be the non-implementation with immediate effect, which you had asked for, of the policy a year before the tragedy. In August 2011, when the tragedy happened in August 2012. Correct?
Let's look at the incident of Marikana and not generalize now. And say, in that incident of Marikana, was there anything which was inadequate in the situation of Marikana? And I don't think I would say I would agree with that. I think that in this particular instance, things were done to ensure that that particular incident is handled within the confines of the policy. So if there was anything extra or outside of that, that then need to be interrogated.
All right, we will interrogate it in due course. Now, I want to ask you about the issue of the political pressure.
Can we move on to that? Can I just ask a question following from what you said?
Yes, please.
One of the things that you said in your policy document, remember your policy document accompanied the letter that went to the National Commission and set out what you wanted done. And one of the things you say in that document is that there must be set up, it's Exhibit R actually for us, there must be set up a national unit for public order policing. That was required under the Act. It was irregularly, as far as I can see, done away with, and you were saying it must come back. And one of the things one of the points you wanted was a national public order policing unit. Now, the document that we've got from the reply you got eventually in February 2013 deals with what had been done. As you say, the policy had been implemented gradually.
Yes.
But as far as the national capacity was concerned, the national unit is concerned, that's dealt with. Unfortunately, the pages aren't numbered, but it's dealt with as part of the schedule to that exhibit, which is quadruple 1.2. And it's actually section 4 of that document. And it talks about you need a management decision to transfer POP Pretoria to national, and then it goes on about the various things that have to be done in regard to that. And the due dates they have there are all 2013 dates. So one of the things that you wanted was a national POP unit. That was only planned to happen in 2013. So it hadn't happened yet at the time of Marikana. See? So that is a factor which is undoubtedly present. One of the problems, I don't expect you to answer this, but I just mention it for information because it may be relevant. One of the problems that has been debated here was when the actual plan was worked out that was going to be implemented on the Thursday afternoon. The evidence is it came before the Joint Operation Centre Committee for the first time at 1:30 on the Thursday afternoon. And at that stage, there were no POP people present. They were all out in the field. So insofar as that plan was approved, and it's argued there were defects, we don't have to debate those with you, those are operational matters. But insofar as that plan had the approval of the JOCOM, as it was called, there were no input at that stage from any POP people as such. There are arguments that they could have objected later, but those are other matters we don't have to debate with you now. The point is, I think, that if you already had had a national POP unit established, they presumably would have run the whole show, if I can call it that, and they would have come up with all the necessary inputs before the plan, such as it was implemented. What in fact happened, according to the evidence, was one of the leading characters involved was Major General Annandale, who was not a POP man, he was SDF, actually. And one of his key adjutants in doing it was the gentleman you heard about yesterday, Lieutenant Colonel Scott, who had a bit of POP training in the past, but he was basically a planner, also part of the SDF. They didn't have the detailed experience of POP work, which I assume the heads of the national POP unit you wanted to set up would have had. So to that extent, that may have some relevance in regard to the question, which we very fairly answered in the affirmative, that if your plan had already been implemented, the result might have been different. But I don't know whether you want to respond to that.
Well, Chair, thanks. As you say, we have responded to that question, and we're asking the specific areas to affirm, not to affirm, and that is one area which we can affirm.
I see your successor is here. I don't know whether he's heard what we said, but of course we're now already in 2014,
yes.
And we're not concerned really with what the position is now. But I take it it was still under your control when you were still minister.
Yes.
Was the national POP unit in fact established in 2013 on the date set out in the document?
Well, Chair, firstly, in what you were saying earlier on, I don't know why members of POP were not on the ground planning on that day, but it's something else. But there are members of the POP. There are things. Let me say this, Chair. When the POP was discontinued, especially in 2006, you had about 12,000 members on the ground as POP members. And if you compare that period and now, you didn't have as many public protests as you have in the period under review. Now, until perhaps I'll be updated now, but around that time you had 4,000 members. So you can see that you still have to do a lot. Insofar as that is concerned, the policy itself cannot be implemented fully because the people who are supposed to implement the policy are still being recruited. I'm just pointing one area of the which will make the policy easy to implement or not to implement.
You see, we've had a lot of evidence already, and submissions have been raised to the effect that the planning was defective. So that wouldn't necessarily impact on the number of feet on the ground, as it were, implementing it. If the planning was defective, and I don't say it was, it's something we have to decide at the end of the inquiry. But if the planning was defective, then that problem might well have been adequately addressed if you already had your national POP unit established as you envisaged it should be done. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, it's correct. But remember, Chair, that we said the POP was not done away with totally. So you had POP. What was happening is that they were now confined at the cluster level and at the police station level. What we're doing now was to get it up there and have it as a national, so that national has a final say. You are able to do what was done in Marikana, for instance, if there's a need for extra personnel who would come outside of that particular province.
I understand that. Yes, sorry, I interrupted you, Mr. Mpofu, but before we give you back the baton to carry on with the rest. My colleague, Advocate Hemraj, would like to ask a question.
Yes, Mr. Minister, you said that the implementation of the policy was incremental. What would you say, what aspect of the policy, if fully implemented, would have made a difference at Marikana? Is it equipment, is it staff complement, or is it something else? I'd just like to understand that, please.
Well, Chair, I think would have to, uncover really the elements which played to the weakness or weaknesses which happened there in Marikana, if any. Because one aspect we're talking about now, the aspect of personnel, I wouldn't say that the people who were deployed there were inadequate. I wouldn't say that. I think there were a number of police officers, as I was assured when I spoke to the provincial commissioner. So that aspect may not be a factor here. We would have to understand and interrogate. I'm glad the chair was talking about another aspect, which is the aspect of planning, which is very important in public order policing. There may be other aspects. He spoke about the experience of the commanders and their training, particularly, or lack thereof in public order policing. So there may be other factors. Maybe these are some of them, or there are others. But insofar as personnel and the force levels, I don't think that anybody can say that you had few members of SABC on the ground.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. I hope Mr. Wesley is taken into account. Let me just take one example. The policy, for example, the policy prescribes that warnings should be given to people. That's an important aspect of the policy, correct?
Yes, warnings and also negotiations with the people. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just using that as an example. If we can show that warnings were not given in both at scene 1 and at scene 2, then you'd agree that had the policy been in place and fully implemented in that regard, the deaths might have been avoided. At least you must agree with that.
Maybe in place won't apply here, but fully implemented may be apply.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying in that respect. Sorry,
He's given you the answer, hasn't he? He says if it's been fully implemented, the answer is yes. So.
Answer is yes. Oh.
Can we perhaps take the tea adjournment now, or would you like to ask another question before we do that?
If I may just ask another question, Chairperson, just in this regard, so that I can then, when we come back, just get to the meat. Two quick ones. Would you agree that, given your answers which you gave to Mr. Bezos yesterday, that and which we discussed this morning, that on the issue of maximum force and all that, that it was reserved for criminals or special types of people. That in that regard, the question of the characterization of what was happening in Marikana, or the characterization of the people who were there, was crucial, because that might have decided whether they fall under category A or category B, against whom maximum force may or may not be used. You get my question?
Yes, no, I do get your question. What was happening in Marikana was more of public order policing. That's what was happening. It was more of public order policing. The event itself and everything attests to that.
Yes, no, I accept that. I know that. In fact, I agree with it. But I'm saying to you, given your earlier testimony that certain types of force are reserved for certain types of people.
He qualified that in the end. He did.
Oh, he said that, Chairperson. He didn't.
No, he did say that. Oh. He qualified it later. He made it clear, as I understood his evidence, that it wasn't just special types of people. It was really special circumstances. People who were involved in criminal acts and so on, in special circumstances which required that all the force available should be used. So it's true he originally created the impression that it was special types of people. But I think, to be fair, we've got to have regard to what he said subsequently.
Okay, fine. Let's use that formulation. Would you agree that if maximum force, for example, was reserved for certain circumstances, then it was important to characterize particular circumstances as either those circumstances or not?
I think you've asked this question before.
No, I'm asking it for the first time.
No, you've asked it. Let me answer.
Yeah, but even if he's answered it before, would you like to answer it?
Let me answer. Yes, I'm answering, but I'm just reminding him that he asked that question before. What was happening there fell under the unit public order policing unit. That's what was happening, because these were people on strike. Now, your next leg of your question talks to something else, the determination of using force, including deadly force. That's something else which gets decided in a particular way, and the act is clear on that. And I've said that you look at what happened, look at that together, because you even quoted our act, SABC Act. You look at that together with the Section 49 of Criminal Procedure Act.
Okay. So I'll ask the question again. I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you in general. Forget about Marikana or anything for the moment. I'm saying, would you agree that if a particular type of use of force, particular methods of use of force is reserved for a particular set of circumstances, characterization of a situation becomes important so that we can know whether we are dealing with that situation or the other situation in general? Do you understand?
Absolutely.
Yes? The answer is yes.
Disagrees with you. Let's take the tears
on
that positive affirmative note. Let's try to be back at 12:05. And remember, we're going on to lunch until we're taking lunch at 1. We'll be starting again at 1:30.
No,
Commission resumes. Minister, you're still bound by your affirmation. Mr. Mpofu.
Thank you, Chairperson. Minister, just the last of those signpost questions. It's correct, isn't it, that, and I think that's indicated in your statement as well, that in terms of what you call, the constitutional segregation of roles, on your own version, the Constitution goes out of its way to ensure that the operational management of the police, headed by the National Commissioner, is shielded from political interference, correct?
Yes.
And for the Constitution to do that, it would be because it wants, obviously, to protect us as citizens from a likelihood of political interference in operational management, correct?
Yes.
And according to you, one of the key ways in which that segregation is practiced is the fact that your port of call, as far as operational management is concerned, would be the National Commissioner, correct?
My port of call? Repeat that.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, okay, maybe I'll use a different expression. In order to implement that segregation, the person with whom you would liaise, the linkage between you as the political head and the operational management is the National Commissioner.
National Commissioner, provincial commissioners, and all other, including station commanders if there's a need, yes.
Yes, but the primary person with whom you would liaise when issues are raised would be the National Commissioner. That would be the correct protocol.
Well, there is nothing like a Chinese wall on that.
No.
But if something would be needing the National Commissioner's attention, we are at a national level. I go to her. But if I have to get to the provincial commissioner, I do that. But as a practice, the National Commissioner would be informed about any other engagement I have with all other officials. So
Yeah.
there's no official who's out of reach of the Minister of Police.
No. No, let me explain this, maybe using an example of a corporate entity. What I'm saying to you is that if there's a board, which would be equivalent would be you, and there is management, and there's a CEO, of course, if there's a crisis or as a last resort and all sorts of eventualities, the board could speak to anybody. But good governance would demand that they don't jump the CEO. What I'm saying is that for you, the best way to communicate with management would be to communicate with the person who reports to you, that is the National Commissioner, who is accountable to you. This is an accountability point, actually.
Well, unlike the corporate world, as you are saying, in the thick of things within the police, and if there is anybody the Minister of Police wants to have or wants to know or to communicate, will communicate with anybody.
Yes.
The National Commissioner of the South African Police Service reports to the Minister, but she's not the only one who reports to the Minister.
Yeah. Minister, sir, I don't want us to spend time on this. It's a very simple point. Putting aside exceptional circumstances, emergencies, and what have you, is it good governance or good protocol that you would primarily communicate with the National Commissioner rather than the people who report to her? or him?
Well, the person I interact with mostly is at the national level, who's the national commissioner.
Yes. But if there are exceptional circumstances, you can go further down, correct?
We are one. I don't know why we are repeating this thing. We are at one in what we are talking about.
I'll take that as a yes. Okay. Now, in fact, that's what you say in your first statement. You say that you regularly receive complaints and so on, and then you say, I take this up with the National Commissioner in order to ensure that matters are attended to. So I don't know why we're having a problem now.
That's why I'm saying, can we get another question?
No, well, if you answer this one, we'll get another one. Is it true?
I've affirmed what you are saying.
He's given you an answer.
I've affirmed what you are saying.
Well, Chairperson, it would help a lot, Chairperson, if you could also protect me to get answers. Simple yes or a no will do. Then I must get a simple yes or no, not a lecture. Is that answer a yes? Yeah, let's try.
In your initial statement, you said that you often receive complaints from members of the public and so on, and what you then do is you take up these points with the National Commissioner.
Yes.
That's what you said.
Yes.
Now, what Mr. Mpofu wants to know, that I take it, because you expressed it like that, that's the normal procedure that applies.
Yes.
That's okay. So it's possible. Okay. Now, why in the current situation, I'm going to make a point that in your first statement, you were deliberately misleading the Commission. If you go to triple F29. In that statement, you concealed the fact that you communicated with the provincial commissioner.
I did not conceal. I said yesterday that it was an oversight, and upon seeing my records, I then remembered that I spoke to the provincial commissioner, and there would be no reason for me to conceal anything, because voluntarily I went about to get my records, my phone records, telephone records, and I gave it to this honorable commission.
No. So when you say you remember, are you suggesting that you had forgotten that you spoke to the provincial commissioner?
As I said, it was an oversight on my part. It's here in my statement. I said even yesterday that this was an oversight. I did speak to the provincial commissioner, and when I got the records of my phone, I then recalled that indeed I spoke to the provincial commissioner first.
What Mr. Mpofu wants to know, more simplicity in what you say already, that when you made your initial statement, you forgot that you spoke to the provincial commissioner. And that's what you mean by saying it was an oversight. And subsequently, when you saw your phone record, you remembered. Is that
that's what I'm saying? Yes, that's what I'm saying, Chair.
Good. So it's a yes. You forgot. Okay. Now, but that's not. It's not as much as that you forgot. The point is that you said something that is not true, that is not correct. If you go to paragraph 17, paragraph 17 of triple F29, Chairperson. There you deal with your telephone calls to Mr. Zogwana and Mr. Ramaphosa. And then paragraph 18, you say, having been alerted to the situation in Marikana, as indicated above, I discussed the issue with the National Commissioner and received assurances that SABC was able to handle the matter. That did not happen.
I did talk to the National Commissioner. As I say in my statement, that I spoke to both the National Commissioner and the Provincial Commissioner. I spoke to the National Commissioner to ascertain what Provincial Commissioner has been briefing me about, whether or not that is correct. So I did talk to the National Commissioner.
No, Minister, please. I'm saying to you, according to your own records, within a space of 5 minutes of having received, or rather of having spoken to Mr. Ramaphosa and Mr. Zokwana, you immediately called the Provincial Commissioner. Is that correct?
Yes, I called the Provincial Commissioner.
Yes. So that's the first thing you did as soon as you spoke to the two gentlemen, was to call the Provincial Commissioner.
Yes.
Yeah. And now you want to say that you forgot such an important thing. You speak to these people. This is the whole trigger of your involvement in this saga. You get called by politicians, and then your immediate reaction within 5 minutes is to call the Provincial Commissioner, and you forget. Is that your evidence?
I think I have answered that, and I've said that I forgot, and I say in my statement here that I discovered when I looked at my records, and I corrected that.
But you were specifically asked by the evidence leaders to record conversations with a list of people, including the Provincial Commissioner, and you omitted the Provincial Commissioner.
No, Chairperson. Perhaps Mr. Mpofu wants to show us that request that lists the Provincial Commissioner.
Yes. No, I don't have to do that. I'll just go to the
because
state.
Chairperson, it simply does not exist. There was no request from the evidence leaders that says, tell us about your communications with the Provincial Commissioner.
Okay, Chairperson, I hope that I will get an apology for that. If you go to the statement of the witness, quadruple C1, the witness says himself that there was at paragraph 2, there was a request addressed to me through the evidence leaders under the leadership of Madlanga J. At the time of the leader of the evidence leading the commission. The request in the main concerned 2.1, my conversations with the National Commissioner, the police, the Provincial Commissioner of the Northwest, Mr. Ramaphosa, and so on and so on. So that's where the request. I'm waiting for my apology.
What do you say about that, Mr. Nkosi Thomas? The interest of collegial harmony.
No, Chair, there is no need for me to apologize.
Okay.
And I will explain this statement if I have to, but
That's
I'll
fine.
just let
All
the
right, well,
question be
let's
put
go on
to the
with the
witness.
cross-examination.
That's fine, Chairperson.
Let's go on with the cross-examination. Right.
That's fine. I'll go on. Thank you, Chairperson. Please answer the question.
If you repeated the
Yes,
question,
yes.
the Minister may remember it, but I don't. So
Yeah.
repeat the question.
Thank
out
you,
of
Chairperson.
consideration for my...
Yes. Thank you, Chairperson. This is what I was asking you before I was interrupted, Minister. You had, on your words, you had received a specific request asking you to give communications with, among others, specified by the person now referred to as Madlanga J, among others, the Provincial Commissioner. It was not a long list. You were simply asked the people that you communicated with. It was the National Commissioner, Provincial Commissioner, Mr. Ramaphosa, and Mr. Zokwana. And you did this statement as a direct result of that request. And somehow you forgot.
There is nothing more I can say, Chair. And I said this was an oversight which I corrected, and I can't answer anymore the same question.
as if you've taken the point in cross-examination as far as you can.
Yeah.
You have material on which you can argue at the end, and we must leave it there and move on to the next one, I think.
Yes. Well, yes, safe to say, Minister, that I'm going to argue, and it's only fair to you, I'm going to argue at the end that it's not even possible that you, when you have been asked to do something specifically, you can simply forget about it, and that you were deliberately misleading the Commission. And also, sorry, just to finish that, and the reason for that was because you knew that that communication was improper. It was the political pressure which you were running away from.
Well, there was no political pressure, and as I said, that's your opinion. You are entitled to. I don't agree with your opinion on that. Two, I have said that for transparency purposes, I decided I will take all my records here to ensure that that which you are alleging is dealt with accordingly, because it doesn't exist.
Well, I'm going to argue further that that is not the reason. The reason is that at the stage at which you did this statement, it was before the evidence leaders had unearthed certain information which indicated that you had actually spoken to the provincial commissioner, and your second statement was made thereafter.
Well, as I said, that was an oversight, and I went about correcting that oversight. Nobody forced me to, but I am open to the scrutiny of this commission. That's your view. It's okay with you.
Perhaps just to assist, really, it's mainly a point of being of assistance rather than objecting and so on. The questions that prompted the first statement, Chairperson, they are contained in the bundle that is before you. And this is what paragraph 2.6 to summarize. And that you will find under tab 3 of that bundle, Chairperson. There's a series of email correspondence. If Chair were to turn the page, Chair will find an email from Seri, and this is the email that paragraph 2 of the statement makes reference to. Now, that email from Seri reads as follows. It's addressed to Madlanga J, at the time the evidence leader, the leader of the evidence leading team, as it were, and it makes specific inquiries. And it was to these specific questions that the minister was responding. And hence the minister took the approach of clarifying the roles, just so that the question is put in its proper context, and the summary offered at paragraph 2.1 that my learned friend refers to is also understood within a proper context, Chair. So what Chairperson will see there is that Seri, the email states as follows: we would like the minister's testimony to deal with their engagements about the Lonmin strike from the 9th to the 16th and the interventions that they undertook upon request to intervene. Now, they mention, then they specify the specificity that is proffered there, but nowhere did Madlanga J ask the question, when did you speak to the National Provincial Commissioner? Just so that there's context to these questions that my learned friend is putting, Chair. Thanks.
Chairperson, I don't know. If that is, I don't know who that is supposed to assist. It's definitely not me.
Yeah, well, maybe to the Commission with respect, Chair. And tab 4, then...
Chairperson, with respect, can this be left for argument?
Let me say something. It's not quite as simple as you say, Mr. Nkosi-Thomas. The Seri request is indeed under tab 3, and it says, amongst other things, ministers asked to say, or ministers actually, but whom, it should be whom did they contact to implement the intervention? Who contacted them and when? What was the context of communication? What intervention did they order? What action did they take? Whom did they contact to implement the intervention? Then but it appears that thereafter, Mr. Madlanga had a meeting with the minister's representatives. That appears from the email which he sent to Ms. Zondo, saying, I met with the minister's representatives. What is then stated in the supplementary statement by the minister, which I take it reports what was said at the meeting between Mr. Madlanga, as he then was, and the minister's representatives, was the following. The first, in paragraph 2 of the supplementary statement, the following appears. The first statement was in response to specific questions raised by Seri, but addressed to me through the evidence leaders under the leadership of Madlanga J. The request in the main concerned, 2.1, my conversations with the National Commissioner of Police, the Provincial Commissioner of Police Northwest, Mr. Ramaphosa, and Mr. Sekwana. So what is admitted by the witness in his supplementary statement is that he received a request via Mr. Madlanga, ultimately from Seri, and this request concerned his conversations with not only the National Commissioner, but also the Provincial Commissioner. The point Mr. Mpofu is entitled to make is based upon that statement, admission by the Minister himself. The fact that the email material doesn't go that far doesn't alter the situation. So, Mr. Mpofu may proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm sorry, my time is really getting wasted like this. But, and what is more, Minister, and I'm really doing this in fairness to you, so that when I argue, because it's going to be a serious allegation to make that you are deliberately misleading the Commission, so I have to give you the opportunity to answer. What is more is that in your statement, the part that I raised, to justify exactly what the quote-unquote misleading part, you say that you frequently receive this complaints. In such situation, I take this up with the National Commissioner in order to ensure the matters are attended to. My approach is based on the constitutional segregation of the roles of Minister and that of National Commissioner. So which means you know exactly that this is what you are supposed to do. I'm going to argue that if let's assume that you took the default position or the exception or the emergency route and so on. That is, you cannot forget the default position. You would have forgotten if you did what you normally do. But in this case, you deviated from what you say is how you usually deal with these matters. And within 5 minutes called the Provincial Commissioner. And it's not possible that you can forget such a deviation. What will you say?
What's your response to that?
Well, firstly, it's not necessarily a deviation. And as I said, that maybe as you said yourself, that there are normal circumstances and there would be other instances where things which have been done in a particular way are not done. But may I, Chair, go back to what you have just read, the statement, my supplementary statement, that when I was told by my legal team that there are things which evidence leaders want to put to me so that they determine whether I would have to be called here or not. And when I made the statement, my first statement, it was based on very specific questions. And those very specific questions are the ones you were reading before. But subsequent to that, I was told that they've seen my statement, which is my first statement, but then they feel that I need, or they need more from me. That's the Provincial Commissioner, the National Commissioner, where it was specified. But when I made the statement here, it was based on what the legal team has shown me to be coming from this house. So I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, well, but you can't have it both ways. Well, if that is true, then it was not an oversight. It was based on those questions.
Now, the questions had nothing to do with specific people we are referring to, the
Yes.
provincial commissioner
Yes.
or the or the national commissioner or whoever. It was just questions, and based on those questions, then the first statement was made.
Yes, so you did the right, so there was no oversight. So why did you say in your second statement you had an oversight if indeed this issue was not asked? But you can't have it both ways, Minister.
No, as I say, that we were responding to a question or the questionnaire which came here, and as far as I could recall, I was responding to all what I needed to respond on.
Yes.
And as I said earlier on, that this part which I'm referring to of the provincial commissioner is the part which was an oversight on my statement. And I'm stating that in the supplementary statement.
Yes, but if you...
besides,
Sorry.
let me emphasize the point, Chair. Besides, there is no reason for me to have led or misled this House, because as I said, if I really wanted to mislead, I was not going to go out to ensure that we dispel this notion, the so-called toxic collusion. We dispel it through records. I was not going to be doing that. But all what I'm saying is that it triggered my memory. I remembered and I said it in my supplementary statement.
Okay, would it strike you as a coincidence that the provincial commissioner herself, quote unquote, forgot that in her first statement that she had these telephone calls with you?
I would not speak for the provincial commissioner.
Well,
I'm stating what happened, which was directed to me, what I did or did not do. I'm stating that.
You had 2 phone calls with the national commissioner, correct?
Yes.
You had 3 phone calls with the provincial commissioner, correct?
Yes.
So you forget the person that you spoke to the most is the one that you forgot, and you remember the one that you spoke to the least. Is that what you want the commission to believe?
You know, you've read in my statement here that under normal circumstances, if you ask any question pertaining the police, I would tell you that I've spoken to the National Commissioner without thinking. I would immediately, that's the first thing which comes. Now, in this instance, I'm saying it's not something which happened, which may then contributed in the oversight I've pointed out.
I don't understand that. What are you trying to say?
I've said what I've said.
Well, say it again.
I'm saying that
in an intelligible
His
fashion.
normal reaction if he gets a query about a police operational matter is to get hold of the National Commissioner. That's what he normally does. So that's what you would call the default position. You get a query, go to the National Commissioner. This occasion, as I understand him, he departed from that. I can understand why it was this fairly serious matter. It was important to get the information soon. If he went through the National Commission, he might wait, judging by some of the other responses.
That's
he
your
got from the
reason.
National,
I've asked him for a reason. That's your explanation,
well,
not
maybe,
his. Yeah.
It may be. Sometimes he might have waited a day or two. So he got hold of the provincial commissioner. Then he says, which for us to decide at the end of the day whether he's truthful in saying he forgot, but he says he forgot, and the reason he gives, you say, accuse me of not answering the question. The reason he gives, he says, is he normally gets to the National Commissioner, gets to her, and he thought that happened on this occasion. Later discovered it wasn't so, and he told us.
Yeah.
Whether that's a satisfactory explanation is a matter you'll argue. But I don't know if there's any point in hammering it any further. You're not likely to get any more information that will help us, I would have thought. Whether you've got enough is a matter we'll have to decide later.
Yes, Chairperson, thank you very much. But with respect, that's not the point. The point I'm probing with the witness has got absolutely nothing to do with the fact that on this particular occasion he phoned the provincial commissioner. In fact, we know that's what happened. So I can't be querying that. The point I'm simply making is that he could not have forgotten having deviated from what he calls his normal practice. So I'm making a different point.
What I'm saying to you is you've made that point. You put it to him. He's given an answer. Whether it's a satisfactory answer is a matter you'll argue, and we'll have to decide.
Yes, Chairperson, I'm simply giving him more reasons why I'm going to argue it at the end. If the witness must not give him an opportunity to react, that's fine. But I think it's fair with such a serious accusation to give the witness an opportunity to react.
The reasons as crisply as you can, and we get his response.
Thank you. Well, the real reason, Minister, I'm going to argue, is because you knew that the content of those communications was unlawful and improper and constituted political pressure. That's why you concealed them deliberately.
You are wrong.
Good. Now, you can go to triple. All right. Do you accept that your telephone calls to the provincial commissioner or national commissioner were at least interpreted by them, whatever your own motives were, as constituting political pressure?
Why do you say interpreted by them? I can understand part of the question. Certainly, the provincial commissioner said something about them to Mr. Mokoena. Well, that's one person. I'm not sure that she said that she was pressurized, but what she said was that she'd received a communication from the national commission. So I think the plural in your question is perhaps incorrect. But
well,
you could reformulate the question to deal with my point, and it'll be more accurate.
It's fine. It's justified, but I'd rather, if as a shortcut, I'll take your route, Chairperson. Do you accept that it was interpreted, at least by the provincial commissioner, as constituting political pressure?
That was not her evidence, Chair.
According to the transcript, the provincial commissioner said that the national commissioner had said to her that she'd been pressurized. That's the way it is, as I understand it. You put it upside down.
Chairperson, with the greatest respect, really. If she was repeating that to someone else to say the national commissioner was pressurized, does that mean she doesn't believe it? Really, let's not be pedantic. Yeah. I'm saying that, do you...
To believe it's a question of hearsay. It was hearsay in the mouth of the provincial commissioner. But if the national commissioner said to the provincial commissioner what the provincial commissioner said she did, then the national commissioner appears to have interpreted the phone call as amounting to pressure. That's the accurate position.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, look, I think this, Chairperson.
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. On page 9 of the transcript, General Mbombo refers to her conversation with Minister Mthethwa directly.
Yes, Chair. And the evidence, just to pick up on what my learned friend has said, and the evidence of General Mbombo is that the word pressure was her own creation.
Yes,
it was not intended to convey that there was indeed pressure.
We heard that evidence.
We
heard that pressure is a sort of metaphorical expression which is meaningless in police vocabulary. I know she said that, and you can argue that at the end. Yeah. But what we must look at is the passage in page 9 that was
foot of page 9. Maybe it's better to show it up so that
as
everyone can see
it. But I also got it wrong. What is said at the foot of page 9, we all make mistakes, obviously. What is at the foot of page 9 is this, that General Mbombo says, when I was speaking to the minister, he mentioned a name to me that's also calling him, that is pressurizing him.
Yes.
So her interpretation of what the minister had said to her was that he, the minister, had been pressurized by Mr. Ramaphosa.
To her, the provincial commissioner. Thank you, Chairperson. That is exactly the point.
No. Now let's get this right. Once and for all.
Well, I means the provincial commissioner. Let's get that quickly out of the way.
Him.
Well, yeah, but when she says, when I was speaking to the minister, she could only be referring to herself.
Let's not get excited. Let's bring the pressure down. General Mbombo is talking to Mr. Mokoena.
Yes.
She says, I, Mbombo, had a conversation with the minister.
Correct.
And the minister said someone had called him.
Yeah.
Mr. Ramaphosa. And he said that is pressurizing him.
Yes.
In other words, the minister says, according to her,
Yeah.
that I
General
was
Mbombo.
pressurized by Mr. Ramaphosa.
Yeah.
Now,
That's correct. That's exactly what I'm saying.
That's the correct position.
That's correct.
So let's proceed on that basis.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So the minister, let's translate it this way. Try and replay the telephone call. You said, General Mbombo, I have been called by a political high individual, whatever, and pressurizing me, quote unquote, to make it simple so that everyone can understand.
The question, therefore, to the witness is, did you say to General Mbombo that Mr. Ramaphosa had telephoned you? That's the first part. I take it the answer to that, yes, because you reported to her why you were phoning her. And did you go on to say that Mr. Ramaphosa was pressurizing you, or had pressurized you? What's the answer to that?
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Well,
Chair, perhaps that's where my objection comes in. Just to put context so that this is clear. The witness.
I listened to your objection.
No,
Are you
Chair,
objecting to my question?
I'm not one to object to your question. I'm here to assist where I can.
Yeah, no,
and may I try to assist?
No, the witness, the Vox speaking. The witness, please.
The witness
has been asked to, I know what General Mbombo said. And you could argue that at the end. The witness has been asked a question. I think he should be allowed to give the answer without any assistance, one way or the other, from anybody else. Let us hear your answer, please, Minister.
Thanks, Chair. No, I told the provincial commissioner that I've been called, or I've been talking to Mr. Ramaphosa and Mr. Zugwana. They are saying that there's damage of property there. As far as they can see, there is no adequate police deployment. Is that true? I put that to her. That's what I said. Now, at no stage did I ever talk about any pressure. In fact, yesterday I said here in this house that I don't remember anybody who put pressure on me on what I know and what I do.
Okay. Look, Minister, it's supposed to be simple. I can see now it's complicated by all sorts of interventions. This.
Okay.
Can we have the?
No, sorry, Mr.
I'm sorry,
now that we've had the witness's answer, can you perhaps give me the assistance you were going to give me?
Thanks, Chair, but all that I wanted to say at the time was that General Mbombo had already said to this commission that the word pressure was her own creation. But that's all right. Perhaps that would not have assisted, Chair. I'm happy to let that.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll bear that in mind. Thank you. Carry on, Mr.
Thank you, Chairperson. Well, the original question really was very simple. Before I was incorrectly...
No more concurring judgments. Let's carry on the
No, I have to ask the question, Chairperson, shouldn't I? Yes. The question which I was asking where the Chairperson incorrectly corrected me was that the statement that you made, whatever you said in the telephone conversation, do you accept that it was interpreted by General Mbombo as you having been subjected to pressure from a politically high individual? That's all. It's quite simple.
Again, repeatedly. The evidence of General Mbombo on the point is that...
We've been reminded of that. The question is whether we'll accept that at the end of the day.
No, the proposition is that she interpreted it as political pressure. That's not her evidence.
No.
Her evidence is I did not interpret it that way. It is a word that I used.
Yes, no, I know that evidence, and it will be argued to us at the end of the day. We must accept her evidence in the point, and other people will say we mustn't, and we will then decide that point now. But the fact of the matter is, she used the word, and she claims it's a meaningless word in police parlance, and that may be so, that may not be so.
Yes.
Carry on, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Chairperson.
But I think to be fair, I suppose you should say
yes,
that,
no, fair enough.
That's the word she used, and then
Yes.
do things
No,
follow.
that's fair. That's fair. That's fair, Chairperson. Let's put it like this, maybe to make it easier and fairer. If the Commission, if we argue successfully, as we are going to, that
You're going to argue.
that General Mbombo's evidence on this point should be rejected. And if you succeed, then will you at the very least acknowledge that she, and I'm not even ascribing the word to you for the purposes of this question, that she interpreted whatever you were saying to her on the telephone as amounting to political pressure by a highly placed individual?
Mr. Mthethwa, I'm not going to allow that question because it's a hypothetical question on which the witness is asked to express an opinion. We are in as good a position as anybody to decide, to form an opinion on that point, and the witness's views on the matter are, with respect to him, not going to assist us.
Okay, well, Chairperson, this is a very important aspect which goes to this issue of political pressure, but maybe I'll rephrase the question. Let me put it this way, maybe to make it easier for you. Do you accept that from the point of view of Mr. Ramaphosa, what he was doing was to put pressure?
Put pressure on me?
Yeah, among others.
No. No.
You don't accept that?
No.
Well, Mr. Ramaphosa says in his email, which is on page 289, small e. Triple B4, sorry. Triple B4, page 289, small e. That email,
Tap what?
the bottom one.
Tap.
Tab 9.
Oh, sorry.
Bundle through you,
Tab?
Chair.
It's tab 9
I don't know tab.
in the bundle that we've been given by the police service. And it's email number 6. You say it's 289E, is it, Mr. Mthethwa? Yeah. Email number 6, 289E. Email sent the 15th of August, that's the Wednesday, at 2:58 from Mr. Ramaphosa to, I take it these are colleagues of his on the board of London.
Well, it's to Jamieson and all sorts of other people.
Yeah, they're all directors of London, I think.
Yes, all London directors. Okay, thank you. It's the bottom one. Have you got that, Minister?
Yes.
Yeah. That email says, for the sake of completion, I have just had a discussion with Susan Shabangu in Cape Town. 1, she agrees that what we're going through is not a labor dispute but a criminal act. She will correct her characterization of what we're experiencing. 2, she's going into cabinet and will brief the president as well and get the Minister of Police, Nathi Mthethwa, to act in a more pointed way. 3, she will be in Johannesburg by 5 p.m. and will be able to speak to Roger. Let us keep the pressure on them to act correctly. The pressure. That's what Mr. Ramaphosa said. Let us keep the pressure on them. Them must mean those people mentioned there, Minister Nathi Mthethwa and all sorts of others. You'd at least accept that, I'm sure.
Accept what?
That when he says, let us keep the pressure on them to act
Well, I
correctly.
see it's written here that
Yes.
he said that.
Yes. So do you now that I've read it out to you, do you accept that, at least from his point of view, what he was doing was to put pressure?
I won't talk on behalf of Mr. Ramaphosa, but this email, Minister Shabangu is saying that she's going to talk to me and get the president so that I act in a pointed way. That's what Minister Shabangu is saying. And this other thing, let us keep the pressure on them. But I think I have answered these things, that all these things never happened to me. They never came to me.
Yeah. We'll come to
No,
that.
no, I understand that, but I think Mr. Mpofu's point is slightly different. He's relying on the words keep and pressure. Keep. So what he's saying is Mr. Ramaphosa. Look, I'm more interested in Mr. Ramaphosa's answer to the question when he comes. But what Mr. Mpofu says is Mr. Ramaphosa said, let's keep the pressure on them, which means there's already pressure and we're going to keep it there. Whether it really was pressure, whether Mr. Ramaphosa thought it was pressure, these are matters Mr. Ramaphosa will have to tell us. But can you yourself take the matter any further?
Well, I did say, Chair, that I see that he's saying he has to keep pressure. So I see that.
No,
Well, I don't know that getting this witness to say what he thinks Mr. Ramaphosa meant is going to help us very much.
No, I'm afraid
you may well have a lot of questions to ask Mr. Ramaphosa on the matter. I'm sure you will.
No. I'm sorry, Chairperson. With the greatest respect, you can bet on it. I'll ask Mr. Ramaphosa about this.
Actually, moral bet on certainty.
Yeah. Thank you. That's correct, Chairperson. But remember that let's call it the chain, at least on our version, the chain of political pressure starts.
With another question, you using the language of Mr. Ramaphosa, keep the pressure, and you're saying to him, doesn't that show that in Mr. Ramaphosa's mind, he was busy with pressure? And the answer to that, I presume, is yes. He says, yes, that's what he said. What exactly he meant, how he meant it, what justifies the belief is a matter from Mr. Ramaphosa. I don't know if this witness with respect can help us anymore.
No.
On this issue.
Okay, Chairperson, let me, this is my third attempt. I've tried to approach it from Mbombo, from Ramaphosa. Now I must try again. What we're going to argue, Minister, is that your denial of having exerted any pressure whatsoever, as you put it in your statement, cannot be sustained and cannot be honestly articulated. Because, among other things, and I'm going to take the most benevolent interpretation of this favorable to you, you were the conduit through which the political pressure from Mr. Ramaphosa was transmitted to General Mbombo and transmitted to the killers. So, now the question as to whether you were witting or unwitting as that conduit is a matter.
Is it useful that we must object to things like killers and stuff like that?
Oh, please.
Can't my learned colleague put questions that require that?
We had that debate once before. You know, the word killer can technically mean someone who killed someone.
That's all.
But the dictionary also says, I looked it up after our last discussion, the word killer can mean a murderer. It's used also in that sense according to the dictionary.
Of course.
So just cool it a bit. You don't need this point for the purpose of the present question. Rephrase the question and we'll get there much, much sooner. It's emotive language.
No.
Which, the word killer can mean technically the person who killed even legally. It can also mean, according to my dictionary, it can mean a murderer. It's a word that raises the temperature. We will get the truth in this matter far more easily and quickly. We keep the temperature down. Rephrase the question and put it.
No, okay. Well, I'll take one step back. Minister, do you accept that 34 people on the 16th were killed by the police?
Well, this is what we've seen happening, Mr. Mpofu, even in the media, people being shot by the police.
That's a yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, if we accept that the 34 people were killed by the police, The point I was making earlier to you is this. What I'm going to argue is that, irrespective of your motives for now, because I don't want to ascribe particular motives for you, I will do that later. What we're going to argue is you were the intermediary or conduit through which the pressure that Mr. Ramaphosa refers to in the extract that I've just read to you was conveyed to the operational management, operational management of the police, and ultimately to those police that you say killed the people on the 16th. Do you understand that premise? You don't have to agree with me. Do you understand? That's what I'm going to argue.
Because you know I don't agree with you. I
Yes.
understand and disagree.
Yes, you understand. but you
Thomas has
disagree.
turned a light on. What do you want
Fair
to say?
enough.
Thomas?
Thanks, Chair. Just so that that proposition is not fairly put to the witness. The word pressure there, it says, let's keep the pressure on them to act correctly. So only if my learned friend could rephrase the proposition and say, did they put pressure on you to act correctly, if he is indeed relying on that?
Or you could just use the word pressure, but the sting of the correctly is they must do the right thing, not that they must act improperly. You know.
Well, no, Chairman, I'm not prepared to entertain that. I mean,
Well,
that's
you don't have
obviously
to-
a subjective thing. That part you can say, let's put to Mr. Ramaphosa, because it's a subjective thing as to what he thinks is correct. He might think what is correct is to mow down 34 people and kill them. That's a subjective thing. We can't deal with it at this level.
We won't go there yet, but I don't know there was ever an intention to mow down 34 people.
I think there was.
But that's a matter.
My case is that there was.
I may be proved wrong on that, but and in any event, 34 people were killed. There's no question about that.
That's correct.
And there may well be liability of some kind for that. That's one of the things we're busy with. But anyway, rephrase your question.
Okay.
Let's get a short question, short answer, then we'll take the lunch break. Come back at just after 1:30.
I'm saying the real issue is this. What prompts this cross-examination, Minister, is an answer to your rhetorical question, which is, why would I want to conceal my discussions with the Provincial Commissioner? I'm saying to you, the reason for that is because those discussions were unlawful, were against the constitutional framework, were against the law, and were activities through which pressure, political pressure, was being conveyed by you to the Provincial Commissioner. That is the reason why you would want to conceal it. That's what we're going to argue. That's the real point. Do you understand that, even if you don't agree with it?
I understand what you say.
The question is, do you agree with it?
I understand, Chair, what Mr. Mpofu is saying. I disagree with what he's asserting. For me, it's a figment of his imagination.
Thank you. On that
Chairperson,
imaginative note, we will take the lunch again.
No, Chairperson, are you going to, having been telling us are you going to allow a witness to insult me and then just take lunch?
No.
Really, Chairperson, after you've been telling us we mustn't say people were killed when they were killed.
I don't think it was an insult. It's his description, with which you obviously don't agree, of the.
But is it the language?
Of the submission
should we?
that you've made.
The temperature you want it to be at that level, Chairperson. Fine. Then we'll do it after lunch. Thank you.
No, we'll keep the temperature down after lunch as well.